Hello guys, welcome to our show. Today we discuss about decoding JavaScript in SEO. I'm so excited to learn more about that because it's important today to have website without technical errors, to have site speed, to have a website without bugs. And I'm so excited to discuss this topic with Katie Ellis Brown. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's a topic that won't doesn't go away because websites are getting more and more complicated and people are using JavaScript more and more. So knowing about how JavaScript can impact your SEO is important.
nice. Katie, welcome back. You shared a lot of valuable insights first time and introduce yourself for new listeners who might not know you,
Sure.
but want to know about your business experience, anything that can help to learn more about you.
Sure. So yes, I am Kathy Alice Brown. The reason I'm Kathy Alice Brown is because there's something like 8,000 Kathy Browns in the US. So that's why I have the Alice in there, is just to
Yeah.
distinguish myself. And if you search on that, you should find me. So I've been an SEO consultant. Oh my gosh, I think it's 14 years now. So I've been at this game for a while, and I primarily do focus on technical SEO. Although I've done a little things like copywriting and some content ideation. So I get my hands dirty in all sorts of things. But yeah, technical SEO is my primary focus. And I'm an independent. So I work a lot with agencies. A lot of times they'll bring me in as the technical lead on a project, and then I have my own clients. And I've been independent for a while. The other thing I'm doing right now I'm an expert in residence at Previsible, which is a agency that does SEO consulting, but they also focus on let's see if I get that word right,
Hmm.
operationalizing SEO. So they help people kind of build SEO teams and things like that. And so that's a gig I'm doing right now. I do 2 days a week with them. So yeah, that's
Hmm.
all about me. Prior to SEO, I was in web engineering manager. So that's kind of why I lean technical, is that's my background.
Nice. Love it. Yeah, awesome experience. I spoke with founders of Previsible. They
Yep.
spoke on my podcast. I love them, a lot of value. And Katie, I want to start from your living tools. You mentioned that you help customers with technical optimization. And can you list your tools and advantages or disadvantages of using these tools? Because I see, when people use a lot of tools and don't know what they need to fix, because all tools can list like 1,000 errors a lot, and it might confuse more than help. So your tips, how to which tools you love it and how to get the right data from them.
Oh boy. So I'm a little bit of a chameleon just because often when I come into, because I work a lot with enterprise clients. So sometimes when I come to an end client, they already have their tool set. So I kind of just make do with whatever they have. But like a lot of SEOs, I do have my own tools. So of course I have Screaming Frog. I mean, it's almost like you have to have Screaming Frog. It's
Mhm.
just even if you have a different crawler, it's just a great way to crawl like a section. You get quick, feedback on a section of the site. So I definitely have Screaming Frog. I have Ahrefs, which I like primarily for kind of competitor research as well as doing a little bit of keyword research, because I'm often asked to kind of take a look at a page and give some optimization and keyword tips. So Ahrefs. Like a lot of people, I'm starting to use Bard and Chat GPT
Yeah.
to help me out. Like, for example, one of the things I've used Chat GPT for is to write little code snippets like regexes. So for example, if I want to kind of try to pull out of Google Analytics or Google Search Console, like I want only to look at the URLs that start with a number and then that kind of thing. Sure, I used to be able to figure it out, but when you can have Chat GPT write the regex for you, it saves some time. I also find that the AI tools are can be useful for classifying things. So, sometimes I'll run some stuff through just to get a sense of like, can you group these keywords for me? Can you classify them? Or what, given these classifications, where does this keyword fall? Or we've even done stuff like just ad hoc. We haven't really automated it, but we've even done stuff like, tell me if the keyword tags on this page are actually relevant to the page. So yeah, like a lot of people, I'm starting to explore the exciting new world of AI. So those are the tools that I mostly use, but sometimes a little bit of Python can help. I have one to just share because not a lot of people know about it. You know how you go into Google Search Console and you only get 1,000 rows to export, like whether it's from the performance report or from the pages report, you say, oh, you have this many pages are blocked or are discovered but not crawl, and you export and you get 1,000, right? And you're working with a site that's like 100,000 or bigger.
Mhm.
One thing that is kind of cool is there's a little plugin to Google Sheets called Search Analytics Sheets. And for the performance report, it will actually give you 25,000 rows for free. So that's way better than 1,000. So yeah, there's like a lot of, I think, SEOs, I also have kind of a collection of extensions and plugins that I also use.
Nice, nice, awesome. Yeah. And I remember when John Mueller said about Google Search Console that it's only one tool that you need. I think Google can tell a lot, that you don't need link building, you don't need many things, just create high quality content, but it doesn't work, if you don't use a bunch of tools. And can you tell about what kind of advantages you have on Ahrefs Screaming Frog compared to Google Search Console that provides data for free? Screaming Frog doesn't cost a lot, but Ahrefs is more expensive. So, any advantages, disadvantages of any tool that we have?
Well, and I'm going to throw one more tool into the mix, but let me start with
Okay.
Screaming Frog and Ahrefs. So, Ahrefs, Google Search Console doesn't give you anything about competitors. So
Mhm.
that would be one big advantage right there. And I would also mention that SEMrush is also a great tool to research competitors in. So that, that's if you're looking at a keyword and you want to get some more information and you want to see who's ranking for it, Search Console won't help you with that. It only tells you what you rank for now, and that's really useful. But let's say you want to go into a new area, or you're looking at a piece of content that you really haven't explored that topic. Yeah, Search Console is not going to help you at all with that. So yeah, Ahrefs, competitor information. One really nice thing about Ahrefs is you can kind of get information about some keywords, and then you can open it up and see the SERP, so you can see who's ranking for it. And so that gives you a sense of what it helps you understand the search intent under that keyword. When you see what Google's actually ranking for that keyword, that's very, very helpful. Screaming Frog, well, here's one example. So one of the great things about Screaming Frog is that you can hook it up with a bunch of APIs. You can hook it up with the Google Search Console API. So let's say you you crawled your site and you have a list of URLs, and you hook it up to the Google Search Console API. And if you set it up correctly, it will tell you whether those URLs are actually indexed or not. So that's something you can do at scale rather than take a URL, pop it into the URL inspector. It's not that the information is not there, it's just not available at scale, where a tool like Screaming Frog will give you page speed insights for all your URLs. It'll give you the indexation. Now, it is limited to 2,000 rows per day. So it's a bit of a limitation, but that's, that's better than popping in, 2,000 URLs one by one. The other thing I would just mention that you're just not going to get this information from Search Console is tools like Botify and Screaming Frog also has a log analyzer. It's a separate product. And sometimes knowing what Google's crawling is really important. You can kind of it's a lot, insights that you just, I mean, yeah, they have kind of that report. You can find the crawl stats report through the settings, but it's very, very high level. There's nothing like actually seeing what Google crawls every day to give you a sense of, what Google's kind of spending the most time on your site. So yeah, I mean, Search Console's great. And the API, now that we have an API, that's awesome, but it's not the only tool you're going to need.
Yeah, I agree. I have a bunch of tools. It's hard to count all of them, probably like plus
Sure.
50 tools, extensions that I use every single day, because
Yes.
yeah, all tools bring a lot of data value, and yeah, we have no one golden button that you can click and get everything, so we need to use tools. And Katie, I wanna ask you about choosing priorities. When I check out data from tools, I usually, they share a lot of technical errors. No, you're
Yes.
like a technical specialist. Can you tell how to choose priorities or critical errors? Because when you get like 1,000 pages that you need to fix, it might confuse what to do, where to go. So, any tips about choosing priorities?
Yeah. No, you had mentioned that before. That's a good question. And yes, I would agree. It's a bit of a rabbit hole. So whether you're using a tool or you hire someone like me to come up with, a list of, technical problems, can be very overwhelming. And I would argue that some of those things are not going to move the needle.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's a little bit about, you know, years of experience, knowing what can work and what
Yeah.
helps and what doesn't. But what I would say is, um, any problems with internal linking, like we do, for example, with JavaScript SEO, it might be that your links are not even crawlable because you're using something like a JavaScript onclick, rather than, Google will not consider a link unless there's actually an href in either the raw HTML or the rendered HTML. So, I mean, issues like that when, Google can't even I mean, you have to get your pages crawled. So that's really foundational. So if there's some problem with Google crawling the pages, not being able to see everything on the page, those tend to be pretty high priority because yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there's a whole process of how you get to rank, right? There's the crawling piece. So Google has to be able to crawl and understand your pages. And if you have an obstacle there, it's usually high priority. Now there's some, it's all, some of them are probably not more important than other, but yeah. And then, the process of Google is indexation and then finally ranking. But yeah, so crawling is kind of important. In the indexation realm, generally, I worry when you have too many thin pages or kind of low quality pages that are indexable. So generally, those are high priority, and it depends on how many. If you have one or two, I mean, on a 500,000 page site, no big deal, right? But if it's a substantial percentage of the site or a substantial percentage of a section of the site, that's a problem, because having a large percentage of thin pages or low quality pages on your site will pull your performance down. So I would say those are kind of the two top priorities. Some kind of obstacle that keeps Google from crawling and indexing your site. Um, and as far as like making sure that you don't have too many, thin or low quality pages, because I want to see high quality pages. It's really not about how many pages you can get into the index. It's how many of your best pages and high quality pages you can get in the index. So that's probably the top recommendation I would say, is to focus on those things. And there's other things, like if you have title tags that are all the same, that's a problem. That's a pretty high priority problem. So title tags, maybe are not quite as important as they were like maybe 3 years ago, but they're still pretty important. And so if you have like issues where your title tags are like really short and they're very similar, or they really don't convey the actual intent of the page, I would say that those are pretty important to fix. And again, when it comes to JavaScript, problems where like you've seen this, or I've seen this, where the raw HTML that the server sends over has a no index tag, but the rendered HTML doesn't. I mean, that's a high priority problem, because Google will see that no index and go, oh, I don't even need to render this page. I don't even have to go through that extra processing to see the final page. I already know it's no index, so I'm not going to bother to crawl it. So there's issues like that are also a high priority.
Yeah, nice, valuable. Okay, for example, if a website has a million pages, it's not like 100 pages, and if you got that you need to fix 20 thin pages, it's not hard. No, probably hard even, for small projects like myself, yeah, I have no time to write a lot of blog posts, even to update them. It
Right.
depends on priorities. But when you have a million pages, wow, it's painful. And can you tell how to play with this scroll budget? For example, if I have similar content, duplicate content, how to find these pages and what to do? Because, for example, for one project, we use canonical, to show that.
Right.
But Google, I don't know why, but Google didn't understand this canonical, so we changed this issue to use 301 redirect, because probably, I don't know, like when you have plus 100,000 pages, Google can't, to find this canonical or any other issue. So any tips how to play with twin pages when you have a lot of them, like plus 100,000 pages?
So there's kind of a new word that's been circulated around that people, I mean, it's like a new word, but it's an old concept called programmatic SEO. And all that really means is using programs to actually modify and update your pages at scale. And so when you get to sites of that size, you're really looking at page types. And so with a site that large, you quickly move from looking at individual pages to looking at page templates. So let's say you're dealing with an e-commerce site that's fairly large. You typically will have a product listing page, which people in the biz will call a PLP. Then you have a product detail page, and that's the actual, so the listing pages are with, oh, here's all the bedspreads you can buy. And then it's like, if you click on one, it'll take you to a PDP, a product detail page. And, that's a specific bedspread. Maybe it has some options to choose orange or red, but generally it's that individual product. And then you might have a blog, and then you might have kind of marketing pages, like often with e-commerce teams, they want to do sort of, these curated landing pages to sort of feature, some kind of thing that they're selling, like sales pages of some sort. And then people will create collection pages. So all of those, each one of those are a page type. And so what you want to do when you look at optimization or improving your site is you want to look at the page template, and you want to do something like, hey, on this product detail page, we don't have shipping information, which is kind of really important for e-commerce.
Yeah.
So we need to add that. And, we need to add that across all of the PDPs. So the whole page type needs to be updated. So you really need to think about that. And usually you're dealing with a development team or possibly with a platform, so that when you make these changes, it applies to all the pages in that page type. So yeah, you don't, aside from really curated landing pages, generally you're dealing with updates that will update, you know, a collection of pages that all belong to the same page type. And often what I've seen sometimes is platforms will actually have a template that you can go in and modify. Let's say, you know what? We need an intro paragraph on these category pages, these PLPs. Let's ask engineering to add that to the template, and then maybe we can figure out where to pull that content from, like maybe from a database. So those are the kind of things that you do when you're dealing with optimization at scale. And when you get over into more the marketplace world, sometimes you're thinking about what new page types can I create to take advantage of certain classes of searches. And that's where kind of the programmatic SEO kind of comes in. When you're talking to execs, you're explaining to them, well, we don't have this particular filter on your site, and it would be really great if we had these classes of pages to go after these types of keywords. So that's that.
Mhm.
Now, to get to kind of the second part of your question, which is like canonicals. So remember that canonicals are a hint and not a directive. So
Yeah.
Google can ignore them if it wants to. And it sometimes does. And if they're getting ignored or the wrong canonical is getting selected, well, the very first thing I would kind of make sure of is I would make sure that you're not having a JavaScript SEO problem. So for example, I've seen at least twice with Angular websites. Sorry, Angular, I'm going to pick on you.
Uh-huh.
Where the initial HTML that was being sent over to the server was essentially a blank page. Like it was
Mhm.
completely CSR, which is client-side rendering, being filled in. And in this case, Google was literally just canonicalizing one blank page to another, even though the resulting pages were completely different. And the client was very confused. It's like, because when you went into Search Console, why is it canonicalizing this to this? They're like completely different. And when I showed them, I said, well, the initial page that's being sent from the server is blank. And for whatever reason, Google decided that it wasn't worth sending the page through the rendering system to actually get, the final page. So I've seen that problem. So that would be, I want to rule that out first as a potential explanation of why it appears that Google's, ignoring the canonical. So that would be like the first thing is let's make sure there's not a technical problem that's actually doing this. And then, yeah, I mean, it's, you make sure you want to use the canonical correctly. Like generally, it's not the best idea to canonicalize paginated pages to your first page. It's not really the appropriate use to the canonical. And yeah, I mean, so that would be the second thing is just making sure that you're following the rules, which is like your page that you're canonicalizing is actually a subset. It shows, or it's similar to the page. And, there's just going to be times when Google is going to ignore your canonicals. You just want to be in a situation where that's the exception rather than the rule. So further than that, I mean, I really would have to look at the specific instance to kind of give you the advice. But yeah, that would be the first thing. Eliminate any technical problem because I've seen that a lot. And then follow the canonical kind of like guidance that Google gives you. And then if it's still a problem, then maybe take a look and look at the traffic. Is the traffic going to the page you're canonicalizing? Are you linking, are you linking to your canonical URLs, or are you linking to the URLs that are canonicalized? Maybe you should adjust your internal linking so that you're always linking to your canonical URLs. That would be another thing to look at. So I don't know, there's a bunch of things off the top of my head that I would look at in a problem like that.
Yeah, well explained. I like it, how you can explain, short, long answer, to explain in details. Yeah, awesome, awesome. And let's talk about JavaScript. Can you
Hmm.
tell for someone who doesn't know what JavaScript means and how it can help in SEO?
Yeah, well, a lot of SEOs would say it often doesn't help.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about JavaScript. So maybe 5, 6, I'm not quite sure of the time frame. It used to be that Google didn't understand sites that were dependent on JavaScript. That has been changed. Google has improved their infrastructure generally, although not as often as we would like. But generally, they can understand they can execute the JavaScript and they can understand the rendered page. And one way you can kind of check is you can use either the mobile friendly test, the URL inspector, and even the rich results test. And then all these tools will show you the HTML, and you can take a look at the HTML and just make sure that everything you think should be there is there. So that would be one thing, because Google still has times where it doesn't completely render the JavaScript correctly. But let's take a step back and talk a little bit about how Google actually understands sites with JavaScript, because this is kind of important to understand. So initially, when your browser makes a request to the server generally will send over the raw HTML, and I've alluded to this already. So this, so a bunch of files come over. The HTML file comes over, any images, CSS, and JavaScript. And then the browser will actually go, and there's a whole, we could get into this because it's very relevant to page speed. The browser will actually kind of start with the HTML, and then as it processes the HTML, it will grab the files it needs. Like, oh, here's an image. Okay, grab the image. Oh, this requires CSS. Grab the CSS. And oh, there's a script tag. I need to grab, the JavaScript, and it will execute the JavaScript, and then it will then finally render the page that's all complete with everything in it. So that's kind of the process. So what Google has done is they've kind of simulated that process with, they call it their web rendering service. So when Google crawls a page, it initially will crawl the raw HTML that the server sends over, and then it will take what it can from that raw HTML, and then it will send that page to the rendering service. And that rendering service will do all the things I just described, which is to execute the JavaScript to fully update the page. So some of the things I alluded to, you got to be a little bit careful with. You want like your meta tags to be the same in the raw HTML and the rendered
Yeah.
HTML, because you know what people sometimes what happens is platforms have like a default title tag in the raw HTML, and then it's not until the page is actually rendered that the title tag is updated to be some custom thing that's much better. So you had to watch out for cases where the raw HTML conflicts with the rendered HTML. Canonical tags is another one. I didn't even mention
Yeah.
this, but you can have situations where the canonical tag is different in the raw HTML than the rendered HTML. So you don't want to do any of that. You want all that stuff to be the same. You want as much as possible to have all your links in the raw HTML. Some of that's not always completely possible, but that's what you want. And then Google kind of says, well, it's fine to wait until the rendering phase to pull in your content. Personally, I like to see the H1 in the raw HTML. I also like to see at least the introductory paragraph, because I think it's important for Google at least to get a sense of what the page is about. Because what we've really noticed, and there's been number of stories on this, is that Google doesn't always send all pages through the rendering phase because it's more expensive for them. So if it thinks that page is not very high quality, it may just never send that page to the
Yeah.
rendering service, and then, it never gets indexed. Or, so you kind of don't want that. So you need to give Google at least enough information with the title tag, maybe the H1, a little bit of content, links, so that it can kind of get a sense of what the page is about. And then it says, yeah, this looks like a good page. I'll send it through the rendering service to get the rest of the information. So those are kind of that's kind of the basic walkthrough. Now, when it comes to JavaScript, there's different techniques. There's client-side rendering, and then there's server-side rendering. And server-side rendering means pretty much what it sounds like. All the JavaScript rendering is done on the server, and so what is sent over is the final page. So you don't even have to worry too much about Google rendering it because it's all done. And when it shows up, it's completely done. So server-side rendering is often recommended. Kevin Indig, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, recently
Yeah.
published an article where he said he had some case studies where sites that went from CSR, client-side rendering, to server-side rendering actually saw between a 30% and a 2x uplift in traffic. So, so that kind of argues that you should think about when you do client-side rendering, you should be pretty careful about what you keep on the client. It should be like enhancements to the page rather than completely depending on client-side rendering to show your page. So hopefully that was kind of just a quick, 101 introduction to the topic.
Yeah.
We talked about tools. One of the cool things that is several tools will help you see the discrepancies between the raw HTML and the rendered HTML. Jet Octopus. Screaming Frog has a JavaScript tag that will show you things like the no index tag is only in the raw HTML. So use these tools because they'll help you find these kind of problems. And now that you kind of understand that there's two types of HTML, one comes over initially and one gets rendered by the browser, now that you have that context, you can look for these sort of problems.
Nice. Yeah. Well explained. Love it. Love it. And Katie, can you list mistakes that companies still do by optimizing with JavaScript, and your tips how to find a much better way?
Yeah, I would say one tip I've already kind of mentioned is completely depending on client-side rendering for everything.
Mhm.
Client-side rendering really should be more for interaction. Let's say you have a page and you interact with the page and it responds to you using JavaScript. That's the perfect case for a client-side JavaScript implementation, is to give the user a more dynamic and interactive experience. That's when you want to use JavaScript on the client. Everything else, as much as you can, should be on the server, whether it's a static page or it's server-side rendering, meta tags, all the static elements really should be on the server as much as you can, because it doesn't need to be on the client, right? You should reserve the JavaScript on the client just to enhance the user experience. That's it's kind of adding the bells and whistles to the page, so to speak. So that would be the one thing I would say. And the other, classic problems are when, well, here's a good one because I haven't mentioned this. So I was looking at a site and they literally, how you have like 404 pages, right? This particular site, very heavy JavaScript, very reliant on client-side JavaScript. And so what they were doing is when a page was requesting, they were sending like a 200-page back, and it was the home page. And then on the client, they were executing some JavaScript to actually go find the actual real page, the page that was actually being requested. And sometimes that request would come back with a 404. And so then they would show a 404 page. So yeah, don't do
Yeah.
that. Don't do that. That's bad.
Gotcha.
So I mean, yeah, just the basic like serve, don't do stuff like have a different response code for the initial raw HTML versus the rendered. As I say, think about serving at least a decent HTML skeleton as the raw HTML. Have the, don't change the meta tags, have them right in the raw. Maybe, a lot of times when you tell a developer, it's like, I need this template to be more complete, the skeletons that they might have on the server. And so you might have to work with the developer to get that skeleton to be a little more fleshed out. So that's actually what's being sent over before the client side JavaScript is getting executed.
Nice. Valuable. Katie, I have the final question about
Sure.
your experience. I found that, I usually get high results with clients who understand SEO. If they don't, I tell them, take my course, learn from Lily Ray, Jeff Coyle, Mike Phillips. Go to Google, go to YouTube, just learn, get the basic, because if we understand how to create high quality content, why we need to create high quality content, why it's important to have website without errors, site speed, high quality backlinks, many things. Yeah, we can cooperate like a cohesive team. Let's imagine if you started today from scratch without any experience, knowledge, skills. It's your first day in SEO. You don't know Tyson Stockton. You don't know anyone from Previsible. It's your first day. What will you do today to learn more about SEO?
Oh boy, that's a hard question because I would say it depends on the type of site that you're working on. Are you working on a blog? Are you working on e-commerce? Are you working on a marketplace? I guess the first thing, and maybe it's kind of almost not SEO, is I would almost start at the digital marketing layer. Who's your client? What are their top problems? And what's their journey to get to the point? What are the steps they need to take, or what is the information they need to know to get to the point where they're going to take the action that you want them to take, whether that's to buy something, fill in a contact form, whatever is the primary bottom line metric that you're really interested. Because that's one thing I would really first starting understand the business, the clients, and what is that bottom line metric? Like, is it, conversions? How are we measuring those conversions? What, do we have different sections of the sites that have different conversions? How are those conversions different from the different page types that I was talking about? So really, I realize that this is not helping anybody learn SEO, but if you're like in-house or you're a consultant or whatever, and you're coming into a brand new situation, you got to understand the business and the business goals. And then, then I would say, then it's about what channels do you use to attract your users? Do you use paid or not? How many users, what's the percentage of users that you get that come from organic? With some sites, it's primarily a social paid thing. Organic is, the only organic they get is branded. Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of understanding that landscape and that lay of the land is critically important for you to be a valuable team member to the business. Because then you might, let's just say, they mostly, they get most of their traffic from, social and paid, and they get mostly branded traffic. And they come to you and go, our organic traffic has dropped by blah, 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 blah. And you go and look, and it's mostly branded traffic. So it's not a function so much of SEO, it's that the brand is getting less popular and people are searching on it less. So that kind of insight is going to be very valuable. It's like, well, it's not so much that our SEO has a problem, it's that our brand is not getting searched on as much. So anyway, these are just some examples. You really need to understand the landscape of what you're dealing with to really be effective at SEO. And yes, if you know nothing about SEO, there's a lot of free resources that I could mention, like the Moz. There's certainly courses that you can take. Moz has a great kind of series of articles. Aleta Solist, I think I'm saying her name correctly. She has a learning SEO kind of template site that is also really useful. And I think it's the classic. You need to understand, there's crawling, there's indexation, there's ranking, and then there's backlinks. And so you need to understand each one of those pieces or have access to people who understand those pieces. And so if you're brand new, I almost say once you understand the business stuff, like I just said, maybe you need to get a mentor, or or get on into there's a bunch of Slack groups you can join where you can ask questions. I belong to several of them, because learning SEO in 2 weeks is not going to happen. So you need help. So that's probably that's what I would say for that situation.
Yeah, I think for a few weeks you can understand the basic. Yeah,
Sure.
if you wanna cooperate with specialists, basic you need to have if you wanna hire someone. Because for example, if I start something new, I usually do it myself. I make
Mhm.
my hands dirty. For example, I started PR. I didn't get any links, any mentions. I wrote a bunch of press releases. I pitched them, but nobody
Mhm.
cared. But I got the process, how it works. Then
Right.
I hired specialists who can write press releases, who know the topic. I hired specialists who can pitch these press releases. I organized the process, and we got links on CNN, Forbes, many other great
Wow, those are
resources.
great.
Yeah, and because of knowing the process, I can't beat PR specialist who spent 10 years, by learning about that. But when you understand, you can cooperate with great experts like you, Katie. If I'm going to find great specialists in technical optimization, I prefer to cooperate with you, with Olga Zar, many other great experts, because they can see another side. It's not like to have tools. Google Search Console, Screaming Frog, and think that these tools will decide everything. No, they can't. They
No,
can share
no.
data, but you need to cooperate with specialists who can tell what kind of data you need from these tools. Yeah, Katie,
I mean,
it's
like for example, I mean, I'm not a digital PR expert, so if I was to do something like that, I would want to find somebody who could help me with
yeah.
that, because that's really not I mean, I know enough to kind of talk to a client about it and to advise them that's a good way for them to go, but I always tell them that that's not my specialty.
Yeah, nice. Katie, it's a big pleasure to get on my show, to learn from you. Tell the best way how to keep learning from you, how to reach out to you, how to follow you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm Kathy Alice Brown. If you search, you will find that. I'm Kathy Alice on Twitter. I have started I have been I've been so busy, I really haven't done a lot of content, but recently I've started doing my content. I've worked on my site. And then so I do have a blog at webenso.com. That's WEBENSO.com. You can also, I'm also got kathyAliceBrown.com. And if you go to kathyalice.brown.com, I do have some Udemy courses that if you click there, you'll get, the coupon code to get them at a discount. But I would say, if you're interested in learning more about some technical SEO things, you go to my blog. If you just want to talk to me, I'm pretty easy to find. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. So just hit me up on one of those channels. And I would love always talking about technical things. Really curious what people are doing with AI. So let's have a conversation and let's collaborate.
Nice. Great. Guys, you can find the links to Katie Ellis Brown in the description below. Listen us on Apple, Google, Spotify. Thanks again for your time. Love it. I'm going to follow you on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on your blog, at any place because I can see a lot of value. Guys, I recommend to anyone to follow because you can see value, and this value can help you to find the right direction. Okay, guys, love you. See you.